Welcome to Behind the Tape, where we uncover the darkest, most chilling true crime stories. I'm Ryan, and today, we delve into one of the most violent and tragic uprisings in American prison history, the Attica prison riot. What started as a demand for basic human rights quickly spiraled into chaos, leading to bloodshed, devastation, and a government response that remains controversial to this day. This is the story of the Attica prison riot, America's bloodiest prison uprising. Attica Correctional Facility, located in upstate New York, was designed to house the most hardened criminals. Built in the 1930s, the maximum security prison held over 2,200 inmates by the early 1970s, far exceeding its intended capacity. The conditions were deplorable. Prisoners were confined to their cells for up to 16 hours a day, subjected to extreme racial discrimination, given inadequate medical care, and fed on a budget of just 63 cents per meal. A significant portion of the prison population consisted of Black and Latino inmates, yet nearly all the guards were white, many of whom harbored deep racial biases. Physical abuse was common, and the prisoners had little to no access to rehabilitative programs or even basic necessities such as showers and toilet paper. These mounting tensions turned Attica into a ticking time bomb, just waiting for a spark. That spark came on September 8, 1971, when an altercation between guards and inmates over disciplinary actions led to boiling tempers. A well-known prisoner named William Big Black Smith was among those involved in disputes with the prison administration. The following day, September 9, the situation erupted into full-blown chaos. That morning, as prisoners were being moved through the facility, a small group attacked a guard, taking his keys. Within minutes, the rebellion spread, and hundreds of inmates stormed through the corridors, overpowering corrections officers and seizing control of parts of the prison. By noon, the rioters had taken 42 hostages, including guards and civilian employees. The prison yard became their fortress. Inmates quickly organized themselves, setting up a leadership structure. One of the leading figures was Elliot Barkley, a charismatic inmate who passionately spoke out against the inhumane treatment prisoners had endured. He and other leaders drafted a list of demands, calling for better living conditions, amnesty for the rioters, and fair treatment by the prison staff. The demands weren't outrageous. They wanted better medical care, an end to racial discrimination, and basic human rights. As the world watched, the inmates prepared for a lengthy standoff, hoping their voices would finally be heard. New York state officials, including Governor Nelson Rockefeller, were now faced with a dire situation. The prisoners had set up barricades, armed themselves with makeshift weapons, and held hostages in the prison yard. Officials knew they needed to negotiate, but tensions were rising. A team of observers, including activists, journalists, and even lawyers, was allowed inside to mediate. The prisoners reiterated their demands, and for a while, it seemed like progress was being made. The negotiations stretched on for 4 days, and both sides were growing weary. Meanwhile, the hostages, blindfolded and terrified, feared for their lives as their captors debated their fate. Prison officials seemed unwilling to budge on several key demands, especially amnesty for the rioters. Governor Rockefeller, despite repeated pleas from negotiators, refused to visit the prison. Behind closed doors, state officials were already considering a much darker resolution to the crisis. On the morning of September 13, after days of failed negotiations, the state decided to take back the prison by force. Armed with shotguns, rifles, and tear gas, over 500 state troopers and corrections officers stormed Attica. Helicopters hovered over the yard, dropping canisters of tear gas, sending inmates and hostages into a frenzied panic. Then, the gunfire began. The state troopers, without distinguishing between rioters and hostages, opened fire indiscriminately. The shooting lasted 6 minutes. When the smoke cleared, 39 people were dead, including 29 inmates and 10 hostages, all killed by state forces. Not a single hostage had been executed by the prisoners. Survivors described the aftermath as hellish. Wounded inmates lay in pools of blood, begging for help. Guards, furious over the loss of their colleagues, retaliated by beating and torturing prisoners who survived the massacre. Many were stripped naked, forced to crawl through broken glass, and subjected to brutal punishments. The The state initially claimed that prisoners had killed the hostages by slitting their throats, but autopsies revealed a different truth: every hostage had been killed by bullets fired by law enforcement. The cover-up was exposed, leading to national outrage. Despite public pressure, no state officials or law enforcement officers were held accountable for the killings. Instead, surviving rioters were charged with new crimes, facing additional years behind bars. It took decades for the state to acknowledge its role in the bloodshed. In 2000, after years of legal battles, the state of New York agreed to a $12 million settlement for the victims and their families, but for many, justice had long since faded. The Attica prison riot remains a dark stain on America's history of prison reform. It exposed the harsh realities of the penal system, the racial injustices that fueled tensions, and the brutal lengths to which the government was willing to go to suppress dissent. Today, Attica Correctional Facility is still operational, housing some of the nation's most dangerous criminals. While some reforms have been made, many of the systemic issues that led to the riot continue to plague the American prison system. The voices of the prisoners who died that day still echo through history, serving as a chilling reminder of what happens when justice is denied and human dignity is ignored. The Attica prison riot is not just a story of violence and rebellion, it is a story of desperation, injustice, and the tragic consequences of a broken system. It is a story that must never be forgotten. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Behind the Tape for more true crime stories that uncover the darkest corners of history. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and always question the narratives you're told.